So if you live in Saskatchewan and you want to start your own business, but you're not really sure how to start, then you're in the right place, because I'm going to take you through step by step how to start your own business in Saskatchewan. And once you're finished watching the video, check the link in the description below, and I have a link to a checklist that goes through all the steps and has extra links to some of the important websites that you'll need to check. So the very first step in starting your own business in Saskatchewan is choosing a business idea. So that business idea could be based on a personal hobby that you have, it could be based on personal work experience you have, or it could even be based on a trend or need that you see in the market. So for example, maybe you've been an electrician for 10 years and you want to start your own company doing electrical, or maybe you're really passionate about, making art or designing clothing. You could start a business based on that. Or maybe there's a need for a car wash in your town or a daycare in your city, and maybe you never had any plans to start a business like that, but you see a need or trend in the market and see how that could be a good business. And step 2, once you've figured out the type of business that you want to start, then you'll need to determine the legal structure of the business. So the most common types of legal structures would be corporation and sole proprietorship. There's also partnership, there's also a cooperative, which is a type of corporation. So there are different types, and typically starting out, it can make a lot of sense just to start as a sole proprietorship. Other times it might make more sense to incorporate, or to incorporate later on, a couple years down the road once you started out as a sole proprietor. So step number 3, once you've figured out the business idea and legal structure, you'll want to choose a business name. And this isn't necessary for sole proprietorships. You can just operate under your personal legal name. But if you do want a business name, you're going to have to be strategic and base it on the type of legal structure that you have. Because if you choose to incorporate your business, then your business name has to have a legal corporation ending like LTD, INC, or Corp. Whereas if you're not incorporating, then you can't have that legal ending. But the key criteria for an appropriate business name is having a distinctive element and a descriptive. So distinctive is what sets it apart from other companies, and descriptive is what describes what type of company it is. So for my business, it's called Magnaltis Consulting. Magnaltis is distinctive, it sets it apart from other companies, and consulting is descriptive, which describes what type of business it is. So Magnaltis Consulting. Now, if my business were incorporated, I would have to add that extra legal corporate ending, INC, Corp, or Inc. Now, once you've figured that out, the 4th step is to determine the approximate startup cost of the business. So what are you going to need to pay for to start the business? Are you going to pay to incorporate? Do you need equipment? Do you need insurance? Do you need some advertising starting out? Do you need some consulting from a business consultant or an accountant or a lawyer? Are you going to lease a facility where you need to do some renovations and upgrades? Or do you have a product-based business where you're going to need some startup inventory? So it's good to list all the things you're going to need to start your business and then come up with a price range so that you can figure out how much it's going to cost you to start that business, so you can figure out where you're going to get that money from. So the 5th step, once you've figured out your approximate startup costs, then you can determine how you're actually going to fund that. That might be out of pocket. Maybe you're borrowing some money from friends or family members. Maybe you're using a personal line of credit. Maybe you're applying for a business loan or grants or seeking investors. There are a lot of different ways to fund your business, and a lot of times it would make sense to use a combination of them. So the next step is to figure out what your main products are and or your main services, and also the prices for those products and or services. And this is not necessarily something that you're locked into long term. You can adjust the products you're offering, the services, and even the prices. But it's good to start thinking about that early on, and just think about things like, are you offering certain discounts? Are you offering certain packages? Is there a minimum quantity that customers have to buy of certain products? So get strategic with that. The next step is choosing your operating location and your target market. So are you just serving your town, your city, the whole province of Saskatchewan, all of Canada, the whole world? You'll want to choose what is the region you're serving and what is your target market. Maybe that's people within a certain age group or certain gender or certain interests. There's a lot of different, sub-markets that you can choose from for your target market. The next thing is to choose a suitable location and facility type. So are you a home-based business in your town? Are you a remote-based business where you're not really tied to any specific location? Are you retail in a city where you need to rent a retail space, or in an office, or commercial, industrial? There's a lot of different options, and that will depend on your preference and the type of business that you're starting. The next step is to write a formal business plan. And now a formal business plan isn't necessarily required. It's most commonly required if you're actually applying for a business loan through a bank or credit union. But even if you don't need a business loan like that, it's still good to have some type of plan written out for your business, just to document your ideas, to really think about your business and strategize, and kind of use that as a roadmap, and maybe use that to show, potential business partners that might be interested in joining the business with you, or even just investing in the business. Okay, so the next step, once you've done all that planning and strategizing, then you can actually formalize the business, register it, and make it official. So in Saskatchewan, typically you're going to do that with the Information Services Corporation, which is Saskatchewan's corporate registry. And you can just do that online, especially if you are just registering your business as a sole proprietorship. Typically you can do that on your own. Whereas if you're going to incorporate, you might want to get some help from a lawyer on that, but it's still done through the ISC. So the next step, once you've actually officially registered the business and the business exists, then you can look into getting a business bank account. And it's important to follow the right order of events, because you can't really get a business bank account registered to a business that doesn't exist. So especially if you're choosing a business name, you want that business bank account set up to that business name, but first you need to actually incorporate or register the business and then take that to the bank, because they're going to ask for proof that that business actually exists and that you actually own it. And now the next step is to actually license the business. And this is separate from registering or incorporating the business. This is just getting like a business operator's license. And this is typically offered on a municipal level. So that would be your rural municipality, your town, or your city. And usually these aren't too expensive, and they last for typically 1 year, and then you have to renew them. And this business license is what gives you permission to operate as a business in your municipality. So the next step is getting additional licenses and insurance. Now, additional licenses aren't needed by every business, but there are some businesses that do require them. So think, for example, like a restaurant or a food truck. They might need a liquor license, or a license to be able to serve food in the province, or a food truck license. Or think about retail, like cannabis stores or liquor stores will need extra licensing, or daycares or facilities like that might need some extra licensing. And then on top of that, certain professional organizations, like if you're practicing, as a dentist or a massage therapist or something, you might need a license to be associated with that professional association or organization to actually operate your business in that field. And then with insurance, this very much depends on the business. There are certain businesses that might not need any insurance, and then there are other businesses that will need multiple forms of insurance. So it's good to speak with an insurance broker and determine what makes most sense for your business, and then get that insurance if you need it, especially before you start actually serving customers or clients. Now the next step is to set up a payroll account, and now this is done with the federal government, so the CRA. And of course, this is only necessary if you actually have employees. If you don't have any employees, it's just you're just a sole proprietorship, then you don't really need a payroll account. But if you do have employees, then you want to get registered with them, and you can do that online. The next step is getting registered for GST and PST accounts. GST is a federal tax, and PST is a provincial tax for here in Saskatchewan. So you can register for GST with the federal government. And most businesses need to get set up with GST and collect it from their clients or customers. There are some exceptions, but most cases, businesses need to collect GST. And then with PST, the same thing, except for that's just provincial. Most businesses need to set up a PST account and collect PST from their clients and then pay it forward to the government. So that can be set up online as well. The next step is to get set up with a workers' compensation account. So workers' compensation is just like workplace injury insurance, and that's also issued on a provincial level. And again, if you don't have any employees, you're just a sole proprietorship and it's just you, then you probably don't need workers' compensation. Whereas if you do have employees, then chances are you do need it. There are some gray areas though, so I recommend speaking directly with the Workers' Compensation Board of Saskatchewan to make sure that you do have it if you need it. The next step is to set up proper bookkeeping and accounting habits. This is really important for a number of reasons, and I see a lot of businesses that just overlook this because they don't know how to do it, they don't want to do it, but you want to get started doing it properly right from the beginning and avoid running into issues down the line. So make sure you are tracking all your expenses and all your income and filing your taxes, and just develop those good habits early on and educate yourself on the topic and or hire someone to do it for you. The next step with your business is to develop an online presence, just so that you can be found and also that you have some credibility online. So that could be setting up a website, a Google business account, social media like Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram or TikTok, getting on business directories, maybe making YouTube videos, something like that, just to have an online presence. The next step is to make formal contracts and agreements. Now, some businesses won't need this. Other businesses will need a lot of different contracts and agreements. So those contracts might be owner contracts if there's multiple owners in the company, or employment contracts if you're hiring employees, or maybe just like service agreements for services or projects that you're doing for clients, just to have everything properly documented. I think that's really important in business, to document things so that it's clear what's expected and to avoid conflict or to help mitigate conflict when it does come up. And now the last step is actually advertise the business. So maybe you already have an online presence. How are you going to spread the word? Are you going to do that through traditional advertising, radio and print and television? Is that paid social media ads? Is that word of mouth? Is that flyers? There's a bunch of different options for advertising, and you can kind of just feel free to do whatever makes the most sense for you and experiment with that. But obviously, if you want to grow your business and find clients, you're going to need to advertise in some form. So hopefully that was helpful. Again, check the description below for the link for the checklist that I have that has links to some of these websites. And if you have any questions, you can leave a question in the comment section. And also, if you want a free one-on-one consultation with myself, you can check the link for that in the description section below.